Well then, the first thing I bought for this cabinet are these. A set of washers for the screws to go on the back of the cabinet. Now, these are actually slightly too big for the screw in question. However, once it's kind of in place and tightened up, it will sit central, so they'll look fine. So that'll just be a nice finishing touch for the back of the cabinet. Now the next thing I've got is inside this bag, and if we open this up, I ordered these from a music shop online, and they turned up the next day, which is quite nice. And inside this box we have what should be a set of castors for this amp, and these are standard Marshall castors, and I believe they are completely the wrong type because they don't have the bits that screw into the cabinet, so that's really annoying. However, what I think I'm going to do, if I get a bolt and a washer, of which there should be some in here, but there appears not, so I'm going to have to see if I've got any bolts that will fit these, and if I do, a bolt and a washer should hold that in place in the bottom of the cabinet. But I was actually expecting a secondary plate that you could screw into the cabinet, and then the castors will go in, but these won't. Not to worry, I'm sure I will work out a way. Although having said that, the bit that goes in isn't going to be long enough. So, this is actually not good. I think I need to get the other part to go with it. So that's a bit of a waste of time. Well then, that was a couple of weeks ago, and since then I've done lots of things, including playing 2 nights at Ronnie Scott's with Mike Westbrook. Anyhow, postman's been in the intervening times, and we've got some other bits and bobs. As soon as I realised I didn't have the actual proper feet, this package was ordered from Watford Valves, who I have to say were very quick. These turned up within a couple of days, and we have 4 proper Marshall bases for the castors. And if I grab one of the castors here and we pop that in like so and give it a little spin, they are the correct size. So these will be fitted onto the bottom of the cabinet, and then we'll be able to have our castors on the cab. And talking to castors, I also bought a set of these. Now these are nothing special at all. These are cheap and cheerful castors that you could put on anything really. And I bought these to go on the Sound City cab just because, even though I'm not using the cab for gigs, it's just a way of being able to move it around the room a little bit easier where I keep it. So I just bought these. These were only like £9 for the set of 4. They're not very heavy duty. I mean, you compare them to these, there's nothing in it. But I think these will do the job just for, light use. We've got one other thing now, which is inside this packet. And if I take it out of the packet, you might be able to guess what it could possibly be. And it's this. It's a Marshall stock small size name badge. And I thought, if I get this, it's age appropriate to go on the cab. It's got these 5 little pegs in the back, so I'm going to have to drill 5 holes to push it into the cab, and hopefully if I make the drill holes slightly smaller than the dimensions, then that should fit in nice and snug, and it'll just finish the cab off nice. One of the things we need to work out is where we're actually going to place the castors, because you can see there's these pieces of dowel here, and I assume that's where the original ones would have been. Now if we measure from the centre to the out, it's about 7.5 centimetres to the edge that way, and it's about 9 centimetres that way. If I do the same thing here, from the centre to the edge, again it's about 7, and it's about 9.5 that way, and there it was about 9. So these aren't actually possibly in the right place. And if we go this side, Well, there's just a lot of random holes, and I'm not quite sure where things are supposed to be. But there's one big hole here, and that happens to be 6. So the others were about 7, so it could be about there. And they were about 9 from here, so the placing could be about there. If we look here, it's different. There aren't these sort of doweling pieces blocking the holes, and I'm not quite sure where the placing should be. If I measure, there's just lots of random holes here. That thing here looks like this could have been where the original caster base would have been, and that's 6 centimeters there, and it's 8 centimeters there. I think that could be where the original was. And if I measure here, if I just double check the original one, yeah, it's 8 centimeters. So if I go along here and I look at the 8 centimeter path, then there's something here. And if that's going to be about 6, which is, well, it's about 6.5, it's roughly about right. So I think these are where the casters were originally. And I'm now going to measure along here 8 centimeters. And yeah, we've got this something here. That's 8 centimeters long, and if this is about 6, yeah. So here is where the original caster was here, and here we've got another thing. So we've got these what were nails, and that's definitely the point where the original casters were. So that's where I need to put the new ones. Okay, that I think should fit that okay, and it does. I'm just going to pop that on there, make sure that fits. Yeah, there's a bit of dust still in there, but yeah, that will fit. Now obviously these aren't original casters, and the original casters on these cabs was, I think, was slightly smaller, had a slightly flatter profile, but even so I think these will do the job. So what I will do now is I'll drill the holes for the other casters, and then I'll do some little holes for these, and then I shall screw all the bases on. So let's get on with the rest. Okay, they're all in place now. I'm just going to get the vacuum cleaner and clean up a bit of this mess, and then I'm going to fit the bases. Right then, we got the caster bases in place. Now this one I had to rotate slightly because there was a big hole there, so one of these screws would have just fallen out, so I just rotated that. The others are all as they are. You might notice they're crossheads here, and they're mostly flatheads there. That's because I didn't have any more crosshead screws, but you're not going to see them anyway because we get our casters like so, and we pop them on. The screws are all in with their washers, and it does look much neater. Now there were a few screws missing. Fortunately, I found some screws in my late father's stash of bits and bobs in the garage, and these are actually brass screws, so they look slightly different in colour, but I don't think it matters. And they're slightly longer as well, which means the back's on a bit tighter because some of the screws were a bit loose, and I had to pop bits of cocktail stick in to pad it to make it fit. But otherwise, I think it's all okay. You will also notice that the jack socket is at the bottom of the cabinet rather than upside down at the top. This is how it would have been originally, because after all this was supposed to be half of a stack, and you would have the two jack sockets fairly close to each other from the two cabinets coming out the back of the amplifier. But of course on later Marshall cabs and on older ones, people swap them over so that the socket is nearer to the top, so it's easier to plug the head in. But anyway, I'll put it back to how it was originally. And now we have the big reveal. There we go, one Marshall cab with its name badge, with its casters. So that is completely gig ready. It's got the 4 Celestion greenback speakers in it, and as you saw in the last video, it sounds great. So this cab is all done as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it would be nice to replace the grille cloth with some age appropriate grille cloth, and I may do that in the future. But at the moment, it's quite hard to get hold of the salt and pepper 60 style grille cloth from anywhere outside of America, where the shipping costs are very, very expensive. It would cost me well over £100 to replace the grille cloth, and right now, as it's got grille cloth on it already, I don't really want to change it. Looking at the Sound City cab then, you can see here there's actually a fitting there for a caster that was obviously proprietary to this cab, but I don't have any of those. Like I said, I bought these cheapy ones, and I'm just going to literally screw them about there so they're roughly in the right place. It's not perfect, but it will at least do the job, because if I pull the camera back, I mean, you can see this cab's had a pretty rough battering by not having anything protecting its bottom, so to speak, for many years. So I'm going to pop all these casters on now, and it should at least be able to move around a bit more easily. Okay, they're not the best casters in the world, but then they were only £9, but they function. I can move the cabinet around without having to lug it. So that's a win for this. I feel a bit sorry for this cab, has to be said. You know, it's had a hard life, but at least now it's functioning. It's got 4 good mid-range budget Celestion speakers inside. It sounds okay, and it's nice and solid, and it certainly looks the part. And you know, it's 50 years old, but you know, I like it, so that's a good job. Well, there is only really one amp that's really age appropriate to go with the Sound City cab, and that's the GP IC 130 Mark II. Now this of course is an amp I've done a little demo video on a while back, but I probably will do a bit more with this amp in the future. This is one of the amps built in my hometown that I grew up in, of Bovey Tracy in Devon. Don't live there anymore. And yeah, these amps are great. I love it. It's got built-in sustainer, which is like a sort of a fuzz circuit, which I think sounds great. And it's solid state, 130 watts, and it's brilliant. It's a great amp.